Hello, 49er faithful. This is episode 47 of the Hammer Nayls Show. This is Jack Hammer of the Santa Rosa Press Democrat, and with me is my partner, as always, Jesse Naylor. How you doing tonight, Jesse?
I'm doing fantastic, Jack. It is a crazy, crazy time. I feel like every week we do a show, and every week something crazier happens in the NFL. Dude, you chose a wild week to be out. I know that you just recently came back, so you did catch some of what's going on, but you haven't been able to talk about a lot of it. So tonight, that is the goal. Let's figure it out. Let's talk through it. Let's get your thoughts out on the table.
Yeah, for sure. I was out on vacation. I got back late Tuesday night and did a stream last night with Jordan Elliott, Splash Cousin from Twitter, and Niner Nation and SB Nation and everything. So we talked about some of it, but I didn't get into everything. And the one thing that the hot topic everybody's talking about right now was Carson Wentz getting traded from Indianapolis over to Washington, and then the corresponding move that everybody is guessing is that it's going to be Jimmy Garoppolo headed to Indianapolis. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, it makes a lot of sense, right? Like Jimmy going to Indy would make a ton of sense, but I don't know, like that just seems like to me, Wentz is a better football player than Jimmy, and Jimmy's a better leader than Wentz. And so, like, even if you think Jimmy's slightly better, I just don't think like that's enough of an upgrade. I think Jimmy is probably who they're pursuing, but if I'm Indy, I'm not going from Wentz to Jimmy. I'm trying to upgrade somewhere. So that's either like a car or a cousin, somebody like that. And if it's not them, then I'm going to go with somebody much cheaper like a Trubisky and figure it out from there, maybe draft somebody because the problem is Indy, this is going to be, I think, their fifth starting quarterback in 5 seasons. I don't know. Like, I just feel like they need to land on somebody. They need to figure it out. And Jimmy is not necessarily enough of an upgrade to go through all this craziness, especially if the 49ers aren't willing to play ball. And from the 49ers aspect, I look at it and say, well, wait a minute. You just got this for Wentz and you want Jimmy. So we want at least what you got for Wentz. That's only fair. You know he's an upgrade. Jimmy is. That's why you're coming after him. I just feel like this is kind of a cat and mouse game between these two. And I don't know if it's going to be settled. And my concern is if Indy goes the route that the 49ers or that I was just talking about, going with a car, going with the Cousins, where does that leave San Francisco and Jimmy Garoppolo? Where's the leverage at? Who wants Jimmy? And at what point do they play themselves out of a hand completely for Jimmy? That's my concern. So we'll see what happens. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I just for me, this is one of those spots that I've been talking about going back to beginning of February. Uh, Garoppolo to Indianapolis just makes sense when you hear him talk about wanting to go to a place that can win. When you start to think about the fit of Garoppolo and Indianapolis, you have a quarterback who is more of a complementary piece to the offense than the offense. He's not a guy that's going to go in there and make plays. He's not your highlight reel type of quarterback. But I don't think Indianapolis really needs that. I think they have a running game that works. They have some really good playmakers on the outside. They have $70 million in cap space, so they can go out and they can absorb Garoppolo's contract as it stands right now for
Right.
21 if they want, and then they could still go out and they'll still have, I think, one of the top like 4 or 5 totals in cap dollars to go spend, and they can bring in additional weapons that kind of fit his mold. Like maybe they go out and get a Chris Godwin in free agency, who was a yak monster last year for Tampa Bay before that knee injury. A player like that to kind of complement Michael Pittman and complement Garoppolo and everything that they're doing there, or they go that route in the draft. I just think that they have the people on offense. When you also include they're strong in the middle with the center and the guard in particular, and quarterbacks hate having that pressure in their face, and we've seen Garoppolo struggle with it. He's really good at getting the ball out on time, but he struggles when there's pressure in his face. And so I feel like on the offensive side they're set up for him, and then on the defensive side too, they have a fairly strong defense, pretty good, very similar to the 49ers, right? They're good at the linebacker level, good in the middle with DeForest Buckner. He has a comrade if you want, in terms of, somebody that knows him in Buckner as well. It just makes a ton of sense to go for Indianapolis. And just kind of, from what I was gathering, the comments that I was seeing that were taking place in Indianapolis, uh, the biggest trait that they like for him is what he brings to the table in terms of his leadership and what he's been through.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I do get it from that aspect. I really do. I don't know. It's this whole situation's a little bit strange. I thought, after Wentz was traded yesterday, I go, all right, Jimmy to Indianapolis, done deal. Like that's what it is. But then it's like, okay, what's the holdup? Is it the fact that they are trying to work out a contract? Is it the 49ers are wanting too much? Where's the snag? And then at what point again is that breaking point to where Indy goes, you know what? Whatever. We'll go after Carr. We'll go after Cousins. Because they are the one team that can absorb even a full Cousins contract, to be real with you. So,
Sure.
that's where it gets kind of shaky. It's like you are playing on a little bit of shaky ground here. Yes, you have leverage now because Indy does need a quarterback, but the moment another team's willing to get involved, there you go. And my concern is Watson, right? So Watson, the teams that want Watson are not the same teams that want Jimmy. I understand that.
Mm-hmm.
But if Watson gets his stuff cleared tomorrow, one of the teams he did name was Minnesota. So if he's like, listen, I want to go to Minnesota, Minnesota needs to get rid of their quarterback. Boom, they ship him to Indy. Now what? So I feel like you're playing with fire a little bit as San Francisco. And I'm not saying you have to just take whatever's there. If they're not offering you something, even decent, I understand sitting on them. But at some point, man, like you need the money too. You need to be a player in free agency. And the moment that a Cousins or somebody else is out there, I don't know. I feel like that this is a dangerous game that San Francisco is playing, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think there is a little bit of this being a dangerous game for them if they don't move forward on a deal there with Indianapolis here in the short term. And that kind of leads us to one of the other questions with this whole thing is, what is the timing of this? When is this all going to go down? Because it does seem now that with that move of Wentz, the Colts have plenty of firepower now to go back and make this trade for Garoppolo if that's who they want to go with. But kind of as far as when do you think a trade for Garoppolo will happen?
Yeah, I mean, to be real with you, I thought it would happen today. I really did. I thought today would be the day. Yesterday they had to get it figured out. They'd work it through a contract. And then it comes out that, well, I mean, San Francisco's willing to wait till the draft if need be. And I'm like, all right, like when is this really going to go down? I just feel like it has to happen before the 16th. Like it has to, because you have guys that we know you want to resign. Laken Tomlinson was in the building. He took pictures in a suit while he was in the building. Josh threw that out on my show yesterday. So you want to resign these guys, you do need the money. Like you have to figure this out. So I gotta imagine it would happen before next Wednesday, but I don't know. Like, if I have to make a guess, I'll say Monday. Monday at the latest, you got to have something figured out because that's when you got to start negotiating with free agents. You don't want to be left out there without somebody to dance with, basically. So you want to be out there with money to play with. And I think that means that you have to have a deal done by the 14th. So the 16th, you can, boom, ship him off. He's off your books. Now you can start signing other players, your own players, what have you. So I would imagine the 14th when the legal tampering period starts.
Yeah, and that's a good date. That's when they can announce this trade at any point between now and Wednesday. It's going to have to. I think it needs to be done, and so it can be processed by 1:00 on the 16th. Because the Niners, and I think that's for all parties involved, whether it's Indianapolis, Pittsburgh, Carolina, whoever it is that's going to be picking up Jimmy Garoppolo. If the 49ers are able to offload him here, I think that has to be done before the 16th, and especially, for the 49ers, it's going to be the cap situation. They can kind of get under the number to start playing around, but I think they need to get out of that sooner. But I think a team like Indianapolis or Pittsburgh or Carolina, they need to have a quarterback that they can talk to free agents about. I don't think if you're Indianapolis, you're going to be talking about, I can't even think. I don't remember that Sam Ellinger as your quarterback, and you're going to be
Right.
selling him to an offensive, like a wide receiver or something like that. I don't think you're going to sell Mason Rudolph and, to anybody if you're Pittsburgh. And, as far as Carolina goes, they don't have anybody. I mean, I know they have Darnold, but that's really slim pickings for them. So I think that even the team that's acquiring Garoppolo here wants to get this thing done by the start of the new league year, which would really be the 16th. That's when it has to go down. That's when it has to be official. But I agree with you on the 14th. I think that date even makes more sense because that's when those negotiations really get going and could even be locked in terms of an agreement in principle at that point. So definitely, good timing on there. And then in terms of compensation, what are you thinking the 49ers might get back in return here?
Yeah, I was really strong on a future fourth that could escalate to a third. And I've been saying that for a while, but after seeing what Wentz went for, I mean, to me, these guys are in that same tier, right? So I still think that he probably goes for slightly less than what Wentz went for just because of the shoulder surgery. And especially if Indy is that team that he goes to, I don't think that Indy's going to just straight take what they got for compensation and flip it over to San Francisco. So I would say something like a fourth this year and a fourth next year that could escalate to a third or a second, I think would be fair compensation.
Yeah, I think that's going to be. I think what the 49ers are trying to get is that they might be pushing for 2 2s or something like along those lines. Um, I would think that a fair compensation in this case would be pretty much what they did with they just did with Carson Wentz. Do a third here in 2022 with a conditional pick for 2023 that can become a second or a first based on whatever metrics you want to put in place. The first probably pretty highly unlikely, but I think a second would be doable there because that gives you a little bit of the upside down the road. So it'll be fun to watch this play out. We know what's going to happen here in the next week, I think. And the 49ers are making news and doing all kinds of fun things on a regular basis. It's just kind of being the latest. I'm going to switch some things around real quick. I know we had gone through a list, but just with some news that came out, I don't know if you saw this from Adam Schefter, but I want to talk about the 49ers. They had some signings today. They were able to re-sign Kevin Givens, Maurice Hurst, which I think there's some implications there along the defensive line for their own other free agents that they might be acquiring that we can discuss. Colt McKivitz and JaMychal Hasty as well. All those four all getting 1-year deals. Hasty, Givens, and McKivitz were all exclusive rights free agents that have been brought back. So those are deals in the neighborhood of $825 to $895,000. So relatively small, but again, that's going to bump up the numbers against the cap. So I think the 49ers are right around $4.5 million right now. But the big news Schefter just broke is that the quarterback, Nate Sudfeld, looks like he might be QB2. They gave him a deal. I don't know if you saw this, Jesse, $2 million guaranteed with an upside to 3. That's a big number for a backup quarterback.
Yeah, that's definitely your backup, right? I mean, you're not paying a third stringer that, I wouldn't imagine, right? You can't. So, yeah, that's probably your backup, which I don't know how I feel about that, Jack. I mean, we were going to talk about a certain somebody as a backup, and we still can, but that's a lot of money for a third string quarterback. So I think that our backup quarterback situation may have just been answered. I would say also with multiple interior defensive line guys coming back, we can basically say goodbye to DJ Jones. Kinlaw's coming back; those guys are there. I think DJ Jones is probably out, unfortunately. Wish him luck wherever he goes, but I think Lynch alluded to it anyways last week. He talked about while he was at the combine, somebody asked him about DJ Jones, and he said that was the trickiest one. So I think that they knew there was chances that DJ would be gone. I think these players coming back factored in with Kinlaw being there. It just DJ Jones sounds like he's going to be the odd man out. So that's what kind of these signings tell me. What about you?
Yeah, that's kind of the direction I'm thinking. Is we knew that it was going to be a tough move anyway. Going with Givens and Hurst, that's you pair them with the other guys that they have there. With Javon Kinlaw coming back and so on. That makes sense. I don't think they're quite done with their defensive line yet. I think Jordan Willis or Arden Key are important pieces to bring at least one of those two back, and they're both currently not signed. So I think that one of those two is going to have to come back as well. But when it comes down to DJ Jones, I think that that's one that I think we can look at him and likely say goodbye. I think we talked about that a little bit last week, but I really think that's the situation there. And I'm just blown away. $2 million for Nate Sudfeld. That's a big number for somebody of his ability with what we've seen so far from him in the 49ers. I definitely think that he becomes QB2 with that kind of a price tag.
Yeah, definitely. That's, again, I think backup quarterback is, it is what it is. I think we make a big deal about backup quarterback sometimes, especially in San Francisco with the injuries. But that is a little bit disappointing, to be honest with you. If he has to come in and play any significant time, that's not something I'm excited about. So that's just me. I mean, you saw him in camp, obviously. Maybe you feel differently about it, but no, man, I feel like that's a slight disappointment with some of the other guys that are out there. So
yeah, it's an interesting move. We didn't really get to see a whole lot of him last year in training camp because he was at 3. And so the way that they're running it, the 3s were getting minimal reps. And at the time during training camp for most of it, he was splitting reps with, when the 3s were getting reps in practice during that time, he was pretty much splitting all those with Josh, what's his name? Rosen. Right. Mm-hmm. And they were splitting reps. And so we really didn't even see him because then by the time they traded Rosen, got rid of him and stuck with Sudfeld, the 3s weren't getting reps at that point anymore. It was just mostly, they were getting maybe 1 or 2, but it was very hit or miss with them. So that's an interesting one. It really grabbed my attention right now. And then real quick before we move off, 49ers First Tanks, Aaron, thank you much for the donation. He says the 49ers need to end this illusion they're living in and move on. There are so many other decisions to make. And I agree. And I do think that the 49ers are working on these other decisions. I think the Garoppolo is just one piece. These guys have a lot of different irons in the fire. And we just keep coming back to this because this is the topic everybody wants to talk about is the quarterback position. But as we saw today, they're working on the other stuff. They've got, those defensive linemen are good picks to bring back. Colton McKivitz, he had a pretty good game in week 18 for a guy who came off the bench, and Jermichael Hasty was their third down back last year. So I feel like today was a day that I think we all felt that these guys those players were going to be back. The Sudfeld deal, though, at $2 million is just blows you away on that one.
Yeah, I would say so. Not the quarterback news we were looking for today, San Francisco. Very disappointing.
Yeah. I mean, and they could still draft a quarterback, or they could even possibly sign one. Who knows? I mean, it's not like they're done. There was some news today. I saw some video. Well, I sent you a video of one quarterback that's looking to make a comeback. He was he
looked good too.
Yeah, right.
Like he was in shape. Yeah.
Yeah. He's definitely got some moves. We'll get to that one. And I don't know if we have video of that we can bring up, but that was really really good stuff there. But no, Colin Kaepernick and he's in the news again. Posted a video of himself working out, says that he's still working, still keeping himself in shape. And the topic that we talked about was, maybe backing up Lance, but with the situation and the signing we saw, it definitely looks like they're going to go with Sudfeld as the backup. I don't think you're going to pay a third team guy that, but still Colin Kaepernick to the 49ers to give him a shot to be on the roster. What do you think?
I mean, I don't think that it would work. Right. Shanahan did pass up on him, but I certainly would take the chance. I mean, that's just me personally. I know that Kaepernick is not the guy that he was, 2012, 2013 timeframe, but he was a really good player for a short period of time. And, I just look at it and say, if there's anything left in the tank, Cam's still getting chances, right? Like Cam's still playing football. I don't know if he will be this year, but I got to imagine that Kaepernick can do what Cam does, if not a little bit better. So, I personally would kick the tires on him if I was running a team, but I don't think the 49ers will. And to be truthful, I don't think he would want to go to the 49ers. But I'm a Cap fan, man. I always was. So for me, like selfishly, just as a fan, I would absolutely do it. But I don't think it's realistic. chances are he's probably never going to play in the league again. And that's just kind of where it's at with it.
Yeah, and it's one of those things with Kaepernick, right? Is he probably should have been around here in 2017,
Oh
realistically,
yeah,
with
for
with
sure.
everything that was going on, and they gave some excuses as to why they didn't want to bring him back. But it's funny because the reasoning that they didn't want to keep him uh, is a lot of those same reasons as to why they wanted to go out and get Trey Lance.
Right.
Is Kaepernick going to be back? No, I don't think so. I think my first thought of upon seeing the video of Lance today was, um, not Lance, excuse me, but Kaepernick today was, if he wants to play and he wants to play pro football, he can. There's another league that just did a draft like a couple weeks ago. I mean, he can go
Good
back and
point.
go if you want to play it. If you want to get paid to play football, go check out the USFL. I mean, there's a lot of talent that came up through the USFL back in the old days. It wasn't obviously in year one, but year two and three, there were some really good players throughout that league that became high level NFL players. You haven't played in a long time, so go play in the USFL or the CFL or XFL when that comes out, and show that you want to do it. And that's kind of where I am with it. He hasn't been in the league for 5 years, so to say that you
Yeah.
want to bring him back, that's really tough sledding there.
Yeah, and it would have to be a situation where it's a vet minimum and no guarantees, and but that's the problem, right? Like I don't know if he's willing to do that. I got to imagine he thinks he's worth more than that, but you haven't been in the league in 5 years, so you really would have to start at the bottom and scrape your way up. I think one of those other leagues would pay him pretty probably better than what he'd get for a vet minimum job in the NFL. I think that's a great idea, Jack. I didn't even consider that. I think if you do want to play, that's a great way. Go there, showcase yourself, because what those seasons are they going to run opposite of the NFL season? I
Yeah,
don't know
like
how their seasons are playing.
the CFL season, it starts a little bit before the NFL and works that way. But the USFL is kicking off here at the end of this month. I
There you
believe
go.
it's either end of March or early April. So they're not that far away from starting, and so that's definitely a spring league up over there. And I think the XFL, I don't know what they're going to do whenever they get started, but the USFL is definitely a spring league, and it would make sense if he wants to get back into football and he really is truly, and his heart isn't playing, and it's not about the um, the other stuff, the off the field things. If his heart isn't playing football, he can go the USFL route, or he can continue to sit out because an NFL team isn't going to sign him, and it just becomes a discussion. And at this point, it's a distraction to bring him into an NFL team, because
For sure.
regardless of what you feel about him, because I do feel like I know he's been oddball, given the black ball treatment as far as from the NFL. Um, but if a team comes out and they sign him and they take that risk and they bring him in and it doesn't work out and then they let him go, now you're dealing with even a bigger problem really than I think
Yeah.
you are now. And I think that's part of why he hasn't been able to be brought back into the league, outside of all the other issues you want to talk about with the owners and what they're doing.
Yeah, no, that's it. That's a good point. But like I said, it's more of a selfish thing just because those couple years he was just a good football player, man. I've got a right here, right there, right behind me.
Uh huh.
Signed Colin Kaepernick right there. So yeah, I've been a fan of his for a long time as a football player. Um and I think your solution is actually a really good one. Go play some spring ball, show that you can still play, and then try to make an NFL team. I think that's a great way to go about it. If he does, in fact, want to make some sort of comeback, I think that's probably the way to go.
Yeah, I think so. And I'm gonna just jump back real quick to I know we were talking about the signings, but there was a question over in the comments, and I had mentioned how the 49ers were $4.5 million over the cap. That didn't include, I think, Maurice Hurst. His name wasn't on there right now
Mm,
on overthecap.com. A couple of these other guys were the Hasty and Givens and McKivitz. I believe their contracts were already showing. So when we're talking about the Flyers being $4.5 million over the cap, that's before the news of the Sudfeld contract broke. So they're more like 6.5 now. And really, what this all tells me is they either going to have a big re-signing, restructuring coming up here in the next 2 weeks or the next week before Monday or Tuesday, between Monday and Wednesday, or Garoppolo's just going to be gone because otherwise they're not going to be able to get under the cap. So there's going to be somebody there's going to be a major restructure, re-signing, extension, or Garoppolo's out of here.
Well, yeah, the Jimmy Ward extension wouldn't even get him under at this point if that's how much they need to clear. So it'd have to probably be Armstead to make it happen. So yeah.
Yeah, a player. Yeah, and Armstead would be the most likely of players when you really start to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of checking to see if there was anything else. No. All right. So then jumping over real quick, and this is one that this popped up on Friday. I was on an airplane. I got land, and I turned on my phone when we land, and I find out that the 49ers hired themselves a quarterback coach, and the first thing I did was I looked at my girlfriend, and we both laughed because we both talked, and she had heard you tell me this too, right before when we got off on Thursday, about how as soon as I was on vacation, there was going to be news that was going to break, and sure enough, Brian Griese becomes the quarterback coach of the 49ers, which caught a lot of people off guard, including myself, just considering he's never coached at any level before.
Yeah, what were your thoughts about it? I've given my thoughts on it. I haven't heard your thoughts at all. So what were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, well, I mean, my first thought was, this guy, what are his credentials? What can he bring to the table? And it's, and just walking through the airport and talking about it with her, and because she kind of shook her head too, and I explained, he's never coached at all. What his credentials are: that his dad was a Hall of Fame quarterback, so he's been around the game forever. He was drafted by Kyle Shanahan's dad. He played in the NFL, made it to a Pro Bowl. He was a mediocre quarterback in the league, but he was around for a while. He was successful to an extent. Spent some time with Shanahan in Tampa Bay when Shanahan was just starting. He was the quarterback there in Tampa Bay in 04 and 05. I think he'll understand the system a little bit. And beyond that, he's the one other thing that I can say is that he spent the last, 13 seasons now, or 13 years in the booth, watching players in college and working in the NFL a little bit here and there as well before he got on the Monday Night Football deal. So he's been around the game. He's been talking to executives. So I think he's kind of in line with that. And, my original thoughts were, okay. I mean, the biggest thing here is you have a rookie quarterback that you've used 3 first-round draft picks on, and his job now is to make that guy who hasn't started a game in the NFL, he's only started 2 games in the NFL, but he hasn't started a season as the guy. You need to make sure that he's ready to go, and that's a big ask, I think, of any coach, especially one who's never done it before.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that you're right about that, but I actually got pretty excited about it initially because I started to walk through everything. And so first person that I thought of, believe it or not, was Harbaugh, who himself went from being a quarterback. Now, it wasn't as big of a gap, but he went from never coaching to being the Raiders quarterback coach, right? And so I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. And then also I started to really think this through. I'm like, okay, well, first of all, off-season quarterback coaches or personal quarterback coaches, those are the mechanics guys. Once you're in season, these guys are meant to get players ready for Sunday. Like, that is their main goal. And Griese's a guy who came in, played under John Elway as they won a Super Bowl, then was there with Shanahan being coached by him, went over to be play under Gruden while Kyle was there as well. And so, yes, I get the system changes, right? And so the system, he may not have down to a T, but he knows what the expectations of the system are, and he knows what the expectations of the quarterback play is. And I think he also understands what makes the Shanahans tick and can really help bridge that gap as well. I also look at it as a pairing with Kubiak. Clay Kubiak came with this. He is the assistant. And so between both of them, I think together they can do some great things in getting Trey ready, bring some different things to the table. Obviously Kubiak's a big name, family tree there. So just overall, I'm actually excited about it. And compared to Scangarello, I was never a Scangarello guy. So for me, I actually do enjoy this hire. It did definitely come out of left field. I thought they would go a different route. Griese was not somebody that I expected whatsoever. But as I sat down and thought about it, I really do like the hire.
Yeah, and it wasn't one that I felt really in either sort of way. I didn't feel positive about it. I didn't feel negative about it. It was just kind of like,
Mhm.
you know, just because we don't have any understanding of where he is. Um, but the one thing that I went back to is just in thinking about it. I went back and I had wrote an article. Steve Young, right after the 49ers got eliminated from the playoffs, he was on the radio and they asked him what the 49ers need, what he would look for in somebody to get Lance ready as a backup, really, was what they were asking him about. And the answer that he gave, I'll just read it to you real quick. He says, I'm a big fan of putting someone around you who can push you. So I'm not looking to do that, meaning maybe move him out. But more than anything, he needs someone older who can tell him this matters or this doesn't matter, teach him how to study, how to memorize, how to be reflective recall, so that everything comes out of him is reflective and it doesn't have to think about it. It just boom. Mike Shanahan, Kyle's dad, it was driven into you, the data. We need an older guy that can show him in the meeting room and then watch the film every week and go, Trey, this does not work, or this is what needs to be what we need to build on. He needs somebody to go tell him all this stuff because he's going to need it because of his inexperience. And that to me is exactly what you're getting here with
Mhm.
with Brian Greasy. You're getting an older guy who's been around, and that's why maybe they don't go out and spend the big money on a guy like a Mariota um, or Tyrod Taylor and those kind of things. These guys that we were talking about as being potential backups for them, maybe really in their minds, that's what Brian Greasy is going to be doing for them. He's that veteran, steadying presence that can bring the most out of the mental side of Trey Lance.
It's a very good point. Yeah, I that's a great quote. That's spot on, man. I think that's exactly what it is. So even more excited for it because I think that that's exactly what they're looking for. So yeah, that's really really good point by you. Absolutely.
Yeah, so it'll be fun to kind of see how this plays out. It's a situation where I feel like the previous guy gets a little more grief than maybe he deserved. Grief, how much of Trey Lance's performance in 2021, 2022 is going to be a result of what Greasy brings to the table. How much of it is from Scangarello? Because if you feel like Lance was better in week 17 than he was in week 5, Scangarello had a hand in that because he was the guy that was coaching him up. But it's going to be fun to see how it plays out. I think you mentioned Kubiak. He was with the 49ers as a defensive quality control coach. They're bringing him over to help him out as the assistant there. And it'll be interesting because I don't think they've had an assistant quarterback coach in the last couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a clear reason why they're doing it, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
just think the two together are going to be an awesome tandem for sure.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you on that one. That's a good one. Uh, we talked about the 49er signings already, but there's a few other names that are out there. Real quick, you mentioned this one earlier on, and it was Laken Tomlinson, and there's been reports that there's a pretty big gap between the 49ers and Tomlinson. Where do you see this one headed?
I just don't think he's coming back. I mean, he's in a 12 million minimum. I got to imagine upwards of 14 million. I think the highest paid guard is around 16, 10th highest paid is around 10. He falls somewhere in the middle. So 12 to 14 range makes sense to me. And at some point, you just got to let certain people walk. And I look at it and say, okay, well, if you drafted Banks and he's somewhat ready between him and Moore, you got to figure it out. And maybe you draft a third guy to come in who can play center or who's a center primarily, but can also play guard for a year to compete with one of those guard spots. And between the three, you get it figured out. Two of them are going to start, and you go from there. I just feel like Laken's probably going to go. There are teams. Miami, I think, will be willing to pay him more. Cincinnati's a team that I look at. They've got over 50 million. They certainly need some offensive linemen. So to me, I just think that he's probably gone. And I look at Miami. That's a system he's familiar with. If he wants to compete, he can go to Cincinnati. They just came from a Super Bowl. So yeah, I don't see Laken coming back. I really don't.
Yeah, and there's some definitely some teams that are going to be interested in the style of play that he brings. As far as we know that the Dolphins, from everything that we've heard from from Mike McDaniel just in the short time that he's been there. He's really been talking up the importance of the run game for the Dolphins moving forward, and we know that was his role here in San Francisco with Kyle Shanahan. So that's definitely important to him. And there's a couple of other veterans that have hit the market this week that might drive his price down a little bit. But really, when you look at those other names that hit the market, those aren't players that bring what Laken Tomlinson does in terms of durability. Tomlinson's a guy who's played over 99% of the snaps the last 3 or 4 years, and none of these other guys come close to what he brings in that aspect.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's going to be, again, that's going to make him even a bigger commodity on the open market. So yeah, we'll see again. But this is the thing, right? Like, this is what happens when you're a good team, you're constantly competing. You can't sign everybody. It's impossible. And this is one of those guys that unfortunately is probably going to get away. Now, could they bring him back? Sure. I'm not saying it's 100% set in stone, but my gut tells me he doesn't come back. The fact that he was in the building yesterday and it seems like they're far apart, he's going to test and he's going to come back with an offer that is probably what he's expecting to get. And if the 49ers aren't willing to match it now, I don't know why they would change their tune in 4 days just because another team's offering them. You can either pay it or you can't. You know what the going market's going to be for the kid. And I understand why he wants to get paid. So, yeah, I don't see this working out for him in the 49ers.
No, I don't either. And I think we've talked about it before, but you look at all the draft picks that they used last year. I really do think that you're going to see Banks at left guard in 2022, and I think you're going to see the other one more at right guard here this season, if not right tackle, depending on what the situation is with Mike McGlinchey. That's kind of how I see this shaking out. And then I think they're going to be drafting a center this year. There's a couple of really good ones out there. One from Boston College, one from Nebraska. Those are the two that I've kind of got my eye on as later round, like mid-round picks that could be there for the 49ers. So I do not think that Tomlinson will be back, and I think the 49ers will be able to make it through without him, really, especially if Banks performs like they expect.
I agree, right? Like I think they can get by without Laken. The problem I have is, what about Mac? If Mac doesn't come back, that losing Laken now becomes a really big deal. Losing Laken is a big deal, but it can be overcome, I believe. Losing both of them, I think that's really, really big. That one would worry the heck out of me. So we'll see what happens with Mac. It sounds like he's coming back, but there's never a guarantee. So,
yeah, no, there is no guarantee. But if they do move on from Mac, from Tomlinson, that would kind of lead me to believe that their conversations with Mac are more that he's going to be coming back, because they can then draft a replacement from him. And if he does walk, then that's where we're going to see them go in free agency. They're going to have to bring in a stopgap guy there as well. So it would be, as Josh says over in the comment section, it would definitely be rough if they were to lose both of those two guys, because that's a tough situation for them. I don't think that's going to happen. We'll see. I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night, so
you sound pretty well informed on the situation then.
So that's somebody the 49ers already have on the table right now. There's been a lot of talk in the last couple of days because of, first off, Russell Wilson getting traded to Denver, and then the Seahawks releasing Bobby Wagner. And then you hear, the reports that, the 49ers are interested in Bobby Wagner. And then you listen to what's actually said. And he doesn't even say, Rappaport didn't even say that the 49ers are interested in Bobby Wagner. He just said all the 3 teams that play them twice a year are interested in Bobby Wagner. So didn't really give you a whole lot of information there. It was pretty wide open. But would Bobby Wagner to the 49ers make sense to you?
Yeah. I mean, I think any good player to any team makes sense, right? I think all teams want good players, and Bobby Wagner's a good player. So yeah, in that sense, yes. I think you could trade Greenlaw, bring in Wagner on an incentive-laden deal, and that would be a great thing for the 49ers. But people have been killing me on Twitter, not in a mean way on this, but like, man, if you're talking this into existence, I'm going to unfollow you, because I really think he's going to go to the Rams. They have glaring weaknesses in that linebacker core. I could definitely see him staying within the division. The Rams are about to extend Stafford, extend Donald. That's going to save them about $27 million, which is very significant. You've got, I believe, the Gurley contract coming off this year. The Rams financially are actually probably in a lot better situation than what 49er fans would like to believe. And I think that Bobby Wagner ends up there. So if I'm a betting man, I'm going with the Rams and Bobby Wagner. But would I like to have him on the 49ers? Of course I would. That's a hell of a player right there. So I wouldn't be opposed to it, but it all depends on how much money and what else goes into it. But my gut feeling really is he's going to be a Ram this year.
Yeah, and I'm with you on that. If it all depends on what the price is, right? That was one of the
Yeah.
questions that's over there because we don't know what his asking price is. It's not a trade situation, so the big money contract he had signed with Seattle is now gone. So it just really depends on what he's looking for in terms of money. I think your point about the Rams makes a ton of sense because they just moved on from one of their inside linebackers, and I understand that Reader didn't play a whole lot in the Super Bowl. He actually got replaced in that game at one point. So that does make him a target for the Rams. I think the Cardinals makes a lot of sense too because the Cardinals just recently moved on from one of their inside linebackers, so they have a need as well. Both of those teams have a bigger need than the 49ers. The 49ers have what'll now be the highest paid inside linebacker in the NFL. So, but if they can get Bobby Wagner to take a cheap deal just to come and chase a ring, then by all means bring him in and let him work with Warner and these other young guys. I just don't see it happening. I think the 49ers have their money situation. If they're going to spend on a free agent, it's going to be the position.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I look at it and say the reasons for it would be, or the reasons that it could possibly happen. Again, incentive laden deal. I think he might be his own agent, like Sherman is. I could be wrong about that. But I also know that him and Sherman are very good friends still. Sherman obviously would talk up San Francisco. I mean, he never says anything but good about San Francisco. So that might be a way to entice him. He's obviously going to get some money from being cut by Seattle. So maybe he's just willing to play for a little bit less because he wants to play for San Francisco based off of what Sherman tells him, based off of what he sees from across the NFC West and respects the organization. So I'm not saying it's completely far fetched. I just think it's unlikely. And again, the Rams just make way too much sense right now.
Yeah, no, they do. I agree with you on that. So that's going to be potentially a tough one for the Niners if he goes to either of those two teams. And then the other one, and this is one that, again, you look at spending big money on a free agent. We know the 49ers don't have a lot of cap space, but if they're going to splurge on somebody, does J.C. Jackson make sense for them to go after Jackson?
Man, it's hard to to say no to a corner like J.C. Jackson. This guy's 26 years old, 25 interceptions, I believe, in 4 years played. The only thing that I would question is why is New England letting him go? Like New England tends to value corners. New England tends to pay corners. New England will trade for corners. So the fact they're letting him go, that tells me something. It may not mean anything big, but there's a reason there. And so that one's got me a little bit curious. But JC Jackson's an absolute stud. I mean, that's obviously an upgrade. The way I look at it though is just looking at contracts, my projection for him would be a 5-year, 105 million, 80 million guaranteed. Man, 21 million annually, that's a lot of money. And at some point, you can't shell out that much coin. I mean, they would have JC Jackson as a top paid corner. You'd have Warner as a top paid linebacker. Obviously, you've got Bosa coming up. So that's all 3 levels of your defense. You have a top paid guy. Then you go to offense. You've got a top paid receiver, top paid tight end, top paid left tackle. Where does this money come from? So yeah, for me, I don't see it happening.
Yeah, it comes from the fact that you have a quarterback that's on a rookie wage deal, and so you can play around with those numbers a little bit in the first couple of years, and you have the cap increasing. But I'm with you. There's only so many guys that you can have making the big money, right? at all these positions. And um, the one thing that would concern me with J.C. Jackson, I understand he's a high level corner, but we've seen a lot of cornerbacks come out of New England that have struggled when they get out of that system. There's been a number of them that have not done well after leaving there. So that would be one thing that I would mention as far as J.C. Jackson goes and why you wouldn't bring him in. The other reason is when it comes to free agents, of what the number with when you look at what Jackson's going to bring and what he's going to cost, you might be able to do better by going after a guy like Reed from Seattle and bringing him back from Seattle, because he's a guy that can do multiple things for you inside and outside. Very good in that way. He plays opposite of the corner on the side opposite of Emmanuel Mosley, where he played last year, and that's where he's at his best. So J.C. Jackson for the big money. I understand the appeal there. I just find it hard to fathom the 49ers making him the highest paid. He's probably going to be probably the highest paid corner in the league. I'd have a hard time making him the highest paid corner when you have everything else that's going on with this team.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. I mean, it's going to be a lot of money. So yeah, you got to get a guy that can play inside, most likely, if you're going to spend some money and help this defense out. You're about to lose K1, maybe a safety with Tart. So because it does sound like Tart's going to test free agency, as he should. And so there you go. Like, you've already got multiple spots to fill, to go and upgrade at one of the corner spots and not address your nickel or your safety. I don't know. That doesn't sound like the best business. So
yeah, no, it doesn't. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But I would not expect J.C. Jackson to become a 49er. Just doesn't jive with the way that they typically do business, and I don't see them with the way that they've got their roster set right now, making that big splash. And if I'm wrong, that'll be fun to come back and discuss it. That's one of the cool parts about what we're doing right now, is because we're hoping we're looking at all these potential signings of the 49ers, and it's all going to be happening by the time we get on next Thursday. We're going to these moves are going to have started on Monday, and by the time we get on, we're going to have a lot of things to go over, and some of them we might have already been proven right or wrong. It'll be fun to come on here on Thursday and discuss it.
Yeah, absolutely, it will be. I'm excited for it, for sure, because the 49ers content has been there. But once free agency starts, I mean, you've got that runs for a couple weeks of fun, and then you're right into the draft talk. So it's boom, boom, boom. Here we go. And it goes quick from here on out. So I'm excited for it.
Yeah, this I am too. It's gonna be fun to watch how this plays out. What are some things that you have coming up? You got anything going on your channel tonight?
Yeah. Tonight, at about 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 Pacific. Got my show with my co-host Rad. We're going to be talking a lot of what we talked about now, but a little bit more across the NFL. Obviously addressing some of the situations that have happened this week with the 49ers, and then also the Detroit Lions, as my co-host is a Lions fan. So yeah, we'll be discussing that tonight. Be a lot of fun for sure. So come over to Last Second Sports, tap in there. And Jack, I know you got some things to talk about as well.
Yeah, no, I've been trying to grow this channel for a while. So, I'm looking at putting another show out here tomorrow. It's really, for me, if you guys lock into the channel over here, we're looking at putting up, I'm looking to put up new content on a daily basis. So now that I'm back from vacation, Monday through Friday, on a regular, looks like Saturday, I might be able to have some time to do a call-in show and some of those kind of things. So a lot of things going on, wanting to really try to grow this platform for the future. A lot of fun things to talk about as we go into to the meat and potatoes now of the off season. We've kind of gotten through the dead period, and I think now we're getting into the time where we're going to be able to talk about the free agents and who they bring on, how that all fits in. We're going to be having the draft come up after that, and we get mini camps, and it's just going to keep rolling. So working on a show for tomorrow. I don't have that confirmed yet, but keep it locked in here, because there will be a show one way or another tomorrow. I'm just not sure about the guest. So keep it there. And otherwise, like I said, got Mondays with Rob. I've got I do a hit with Grant on Tuesdays, and usually I have Sunil on my channel on Tuesdays as well. And then I've got you on Thursdays, and Fridays is a little bit of a mixed bag. Usually Coach Johnson. So that's kind of where I am right now, and just trying to grow this thing, and a lot of fun working with you. That's for darn sure.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. We're about to come up on, let's see. Well, this is episode 47.
Yeah, this is episode 47. I think if we go back and if we look at the date of when we did our first show, I bet we're pretty close to a year of actually from that date, because there's been a couple of shows that we've missed because of one thing or another. But I think if we go back and look at our first date, I think we're pretty darn close to where we are in terms of this has been going on for a year now.
Yeah, we're definitely getting close. So that's pretty awesome. We're almost on episode 49. That would have been cool to have episode 49 on free agency frenzy next week. But yeah, it's been a fun ride, man, and we're gonna keep this thing going. I know that your channel's gonna get up there. For you, to me, I want to see your channel grow, because I know that you obviously you're credentialized now, right? Which was a huge deal for you last year. You'll be going into year 2, which I think is great. So you'll be a little bit more comfortable there. But also, if your channel grows enough, then this could be a full-time gig for you. So that's what gets me excited. That's where I want to see, I would love to see it. If not by next season, by the season after, if we can get Jack full-time on YouTube, full-time credentialed, that would be something really cool, especially knowing that I was able to help contribute to that. So that's what makes me excited for you. So hopefully this thing keeps growing very quickly, and you can go do those things.
Yeah, no, that's for sure, and that's the goal, is to get out and be able to do this full time. It's been a conversation that I've been having with the people closest to me, as far as uh, just wanting to make that move. You only get so many chances at different things, and I kind of feel like this is the chance. I'm getting there to the point where I need to make it happen, or or just do it as a hobby. And I have never really put the full time into it to make it happen, like I've really started doing in August. And the channel now, after the season's over with, it's given me some time to focus and really build this up. So, you and I have talked about this a little bit. I mentioned it on some of the other shows. My goal right now is to try to get to 7,000 as soon as possible. That's doubling where we are, but I think we can get it to happen, and it'll be fun to do. And the film breakdowns and all that kind of stuff. And I know you're doing some good work with that on the prospects, on the draft prospects, and those will be picking up for me probably closer to the draft or after the draft is done, focusing on who the 49ers pick up. But it's a lot of fun to do this, and a lot of fun to come on here and be able to chat with you and the various folks that come on these shows. And Grant's kind of been the guy that's helped all of us out, and so really appreciate what he's done too. So
yeah,
absolutely.
That's I'm excited for it.
Yeah, the goal is to be able to do this full time in 2022 if possible, and if not, to at least be able to be in a financial position to make the West Coast road games this year, because the only one that I was able to hit was the NFC Championship game last year. So that's the goal. Just need to keep growing this thing, and then who knows? We'll see where it goes.
Yeah, absolutely, man. We'll get there. We'll get there eventually, man. We'll get there eventually. Just stick with it.
That's right. Well, that and what you just said, then that's so right. That was a conversation that I just had with my girlfriend. She's starting a new business venture, and I'm doing this, and we were just talking about, there's so much work that goes on behind the scenes, and we all know, like, we've heard the story with Grant as far as what it took for him to get here, and then but just from a professional athlete standpoint, right? Just, even a guy like Tiger Woods, all the work that went into him even becoming the golfer that we know, there was a lot of work and a lot of time that went in that nobody ever really saw. And that's what happens with all these guys. And so we're in that phase right now, and it's going to be fun when it comes to
it is, but people don't realize, right? Like you get to see us on camera. But for us that do work also on top of this, I know you got kids, you're going to their football games. I got a 9 to 7-year-old married. That's why my shows are always later, right? Like later on the East Coast, because that's my time. Like that's when my family's in bed. And so that's, my 3-4 hours a night. I'll double book shows throughout the week, my channel, another channel, go through the effort, making the show look good with overlays and intros and coming up with topics and thumbnails. Like it's a grind. It really is. And interacting with everybody, and it's fun. It definitely is. It's got to be a passion. Otherwise you can't fight through it when it's not financially worth it. But the goal is to do this full time. And that's really tough to do when, you're in a situation where you got others to support. And so it takes a lot out of you. So, if you like what you see on Grant's channel, my channel, whoever's channel that you watch, just know that that's a grind that people go through. And if you respect that, then follow, give, subscribes, hit the bell notifications, and show some love, because that's how we stay around, right?
That absolutely. And when you're locked in and you're watching the shows, it's important to stay around and watch the whole thing if you can. I understand that it's a lot of time, but when you're in the car, when you're not at work, if you have that free time, you're on a walk or whatever, throw us on, listen to it, because that's really what it comes down to, right? Is the viewer, you have the views, the subscribers, but you also need to get those subscribers watching the shows, because the viewership is what drives the ad revenue and all these other things that go into how this becomes a profitable business. And there's people that are making big time money on YouTube. And right now I'm just I would just like to be able to make it pay my bills. I'm not looking to get rich. I'm just looking to be able to make it a decent living on it and have fun. And that's the biggest thing, is come on here, have fun. I enjoy the fact that we have the people in the comment section, like right now, like over here, Barry our Baller, somebody who's we've talked to for so long. Andrew comes on and joins the show. He shows up a little bit late. He's apologizing for showing up late. I mean, you appreciate guys that are doing this kind of stuff.
Seriously. And,
and it's a lot of fun. And, Dusty talking about, breaking ground, exploding in the future. We'll be watching your growth and hopefully, and that's the goal. Been doing it now for a while. And really it's just about having fun, talking 49ers, getting to know all these different people. And, it's a lot of fun. And also, I get to get on Twitter and give Jesse a bad time about his lack of math skills and
it's basic algebra, Jesse. I'm like, no, I know how to do the formula, Jack. It's just, I didn't know the formulas that went into it without seeing the paper, damn it.
So, that's one of the fun things, because we get on here, we do have, we do get to have the arguments on Twitter. And a lot of those arguments are good natured for the most part. And then we get on here and we get to talk through it. And usually, we're not, maybe what we need to do is, I don't know if you saw this, but maybe we need to get on and I need to be Stephen A and you can be the other Skip? Guy that he's, no, not Skip, because he doesn't work with Skip now. It's the Mad Dog. You could be the Mad Dog. I'll be the other guy. We can come on here, we can yell at each other and we can have a good time. And, I don't know if you saw last night, but I saw this morning where the two of them were getting after it, and the Mad Dog was trying to get in his chair and it was a little too high and it kept sliding out behind him. He almost fell on his. It's Stephen A. He broke character for a minute laughing about it. So definitely, it's fun, and I have a feeling that as the season starts to roll out, there might be some of those discussions as we go through this, because it's going to be a whole new world for the 49ers with Trey Lance, and it'll be fun to watch and see how that all plays out.
Absolutely. That's funny.
Yep. But we'll go ahead and wrap this thing up. If you like we just got done saying, Jesse threw this out really well. Hit the like button here. Hit the subscribe button if you're not already subscribed. Hit that little bell notification so that you can get on there. Go over to 49ers.pressdemocrat.com. Get over to Last Second Sports and do the same thing for Jesse as far as his channel, and make sure that you're liking his content and subscribed over there as well. So beyond that, I just want to say thanks to Jesse again for another fun show. Thanks to all of you for watching here on a Thursday night. And we will be back next Thursday at 5:30 again within our next episode. A lot of fun things to talk about. Until then, have a great night and take care.